No one.
What's up, Gator Nation? Welcome into the latest Gators Online show. Zach Albaverdi and Nick Del Torre coming to you live after a busy week in Gainesville, Florida, not only on the recruiting front, but on the team front, on the news front, and certainly a coaching carousel happening within Billy Napier's program. We'll get into all of that. We'll get into my interview and sit down with Billy in his office this week. We've got Gator baseball to get into, Florida hoops, obviously, and then an interview with Jacob Young. So, Nick, a busy episode for our listeners today.
Yeah, nothing. There's never a dull moment in Gator Nation. It certainly keeps us busy, keeps us writing. Sometimes, just maybe a relaxing week.
Well, my week started, or should I say, this week I had been looking forward to my interview with Billy Napier. Last year I had a chance to visit with him, so this was our second time, although this was the first time in his new office in the Heavener Center. And as I'm out there waiting to get in, because Billy only does 7 a.m. interviews, so you got to get let in at that time, the news is coming out of Patrick Toney. It had already been first reported by Chris Lowe, I think, after midnight. And then, Wednesday morning, it's obviously coming out, and I'm waiting for this interview. And as I'm on the phone, kind of waiting to get let in, Patrick Toney comes walking right by me and kind of gives me a look like, what's this guy doing out here on the phone? And fortunately, I was able to see him later on in the building.
TMZ, the Z stands for Zach.
Yes, it was exactly two. I let him know when I saw him inside later. Hey, man, I wasn't TMZ out there waiting on you. I have a meeting scheduled with Billy. But that was obviously the timing of that to walk into was certainly part of the conversation. And we'll get into that in today's show and kind of my takeaways from sitting down with him. But let's start with the news of the week, Nick, and that is Patrick Toney. He is joining the Arizona Cardinals, as well as William Piegler, and then Kerry Colbert is also headed to the NFL, where he will be coaching the wide receivers with the Denver Broncos, a team that he used to play for. And, Billy, he had enjoyed some staff being in place for about 14 months. And now a week before spring ball, Nick, everything gets disrupted.
Yeah, there's no right time to have coaching turnover. Having staff continuity is great, and not just for a coach, but for a program, especially a program, having talked to Billy, just over a week ago, asking him how much smoother the operation runs now that you're in year two, that all the coaches and all of your returning players know what's expected, know how practices run, know how workouts run, and just the flow of things. Now, 9 days before spring camp, you're replacing 3 coaches. You've already replaced one, and we'll get into that later, but it's not an ideal time, with spring camp coming just around the corner. And then you have to ask the question like, hey, Kerry Colbert left. Florida had an awesome wide receiver class. How did Aiden Mizell, Trey, and Andy Jean, how do they feel about losing their coach? You saw some of the tight ends take to Twitter, and we have a recruit reaction as well as a player reaction up on Gators Online. But how do the guys who were in those rooms feel about probably learning about this on Twitter as well? Sometimes, especially in these situations when coaches leave, the players are the last to know, and they find out on social media. Tough, and Billy's got his work cut out for him. You've got a very short amount of time to get coaches in place for what I think is going to be a pivotal spring camp for you at so many different positions.
And what we already know is that it appears that Toney's replacement has already been found in Austin Armstrong, who's currently, or I should say was currently, at Alabama, although his profile is no longer on their site. He got swiped with the quickness.
404 error, real quick.
Yeah. And but he's coming over, reuniting with Billy Napier, who he worked with at Louisiana with 2 stints. And in between that, he spent the 2019 season at Georgia with Kirby Smart.
Mm-hmm.
And then had just been hired by Nick Saban at Alabama. So definitely a lot of pedigree there, some familiarity with not only Napier, but Tony's defense and having coached under him. And so I think there's a lot of familiarity there. It's going to probably be a really smooth transition, not only for the staff, but for the players. And so the hire makes a lot of sense. Now, he's a young guy. I mean, you're not getting an experienced play caller if he indeed is going to be the DC, although he'll probably have a co-DC tag just like Patrick did. But nonetheless, that, at least for now, as we speak to you guys here Thursday evening, is the hire that we know is coming. And I would imagine that by March 4th, when the Gators start spring ball, that those other two coaches will probably be replaced by then as well. And from talking to Billy Wednesday, certainly about Tony, but it seems like he had a sense, obviously, that this was about to go down. And one comment that he made to me was, hey, we lose 4 to 8 coaches every year. And this is just part of the business, not trying to downplay the significance of those guys, but you have to have contingency plans in place. And given how quick it seems that Austin Armstrong was hired, Billy's moving fast. And like I said, I would expect that you'll see a wide receivers coach and a tight ends coach hired pretty soon here as well.
And here's a little nugget. I have a story coming out about Austin on Friday, depending on when you're listening to this. You might hear it here first. I'm guessing fans will be a little gun shy hearing, young rising star, coveted coach, because Patrick Toney was that, and the defense was terrible last year. But Armstrong, a guy that spent last year at Southern Miss, he had multiple opportunities. Oregon came calling. Kirby Smart told him, hey, hold where you are. If Will Muschamp leaves, you're going to be my defensive coordinator. That's a 2-time defending national champion. Obviously, Will Muschamp doesn't leave. Georgia doesn't have an opening. Nick Saban grabs him, gives him the Saban stamp of approval, makes him an inside linebackers coach. So this isn't just a Billy's trying to get the next up and comer and hiring. This is a coach who had 3 massive Power 5 schools coming after him just this last offseason.
Yeah.
And time will tell, but it appears, at least early on, that Florida got a really good one here in Austin Armstrong.
And I do want to say, because I had a Florida fan reach out to me on Thursday and was like, after the 3rd coach in 2 days to leave for the NFL, and he asked me, should I be worried as a UF fan? And I responded with one way to look at it, which was, hey, the NFL just hired 3 of Billy's coaches. I think that says something about his eye for talent. Usually you got to worry about your coaching staff getting rated by rival schools or schools within your league. Billy just had 3 of his coaches taken away by the NFL. And I will say that I don't think that they will be the last assistant coach from Billy's staff to wind up in the NFL at some point. You already have 2 on his staff that used to coach in the NFL, in the co-DC and the OC. So, that obviously right there stands to reason. But just the way that the game has evolved. Now, you've got guys like Patrick Toney, according to Napier, who's always had a goal to coach in the NFL. He said ever since I met the guy, that's what he wanted to do. I think for Kerry Colbert, being a former NFL receiver, no surprise really that he's decided to make this jump and wants to coach at that level. And then William Piegler as well. You get an opportunity to move up and coach at the highest level, you're going to take it, even if it means a demotion in some cases. We're seeing Toney go from being a DC or co-DC at Florida to being an assistant coach in the NFL. Well, Brian Johnson did the same thing, being Florida's OC and then deciding to go be the QB coach for the Eagles. But I think bigger picture, I just think this is going to be a growing trend that we see throughout the sport, because you're just going to have coaches that want to leave and go to the league because of the way the game has changed with NIL, with transfer portal. It's just a lot more, I think, appealing to work as a coach in the NFL. Plus, again, it is the highest level. So when guys get that phone call, there's nothing else that you can expect. And if anything, this says something about Napier and his ability to go find talent, and you're trying to fill out your staff. Certainly a great selling point to your next coaches of what happened to the guys that they're going to replace.
Come hang out with me for a year, and then you'll be in the NFL.
Yeah, not bad.
A good selling point. I wrote about it in my column. Go read that at Gators Online. But you touched on it just there, and it's NIL has created free agency. So not now, in the past, a coach would spend their nights and weekends texting 16, 17-year-old high school kids to try to get them to come to their campus. But once they signed that dotted line, they were there. Like, hey, that recruiting job is now done. That's not the case anymore. And now NIL has seeped its way into recruiting, but also into your locker room. And now you're not done recruiting a guy once they sign their NIL or their NLI. You're having to re-recruit your roster over and over and over again, year after year. Until college football figures out a way to normalize their schedule, their transfer portal schedule, which has two different windows. The signing day has two different windows, and you're constantly re-recruiting your guys. Until you figure that out, hey, I'll take a pay cut to go to a higher level of football where I don't have to do this.
And I'm not as stretched as thin.
Yes, I took a pay cut, but my quality of life is significantly better. I leave the office and I don't have to call 13 guys. I don't have to DM 13 different guys. I'm not getting a call from one of my players about like, hey,
I need a new NIL deal.
My NIL deal didn't come. It's like, hey, man, I can't help you with that. So until the NCAA, who continually gets clowned as they ask the government for help, and the government's just like, you're a disaster, until the government fixes it. And listen, the government doesn't move quickly. The government doesn't legislate quickly at all. So I don't know what the timetable is to get, a better calendar for recruiting and transfer portal and NIL legislation. So this isn't just a Florida thing. Yes, it's happened to Florida, and 3 guys in 36 hours makes headlines, and Florida makes headlines, and national media likes to say things about Florida because the fans are passionate and they will react and they'll click and you'll get your clicks. I don't see this as a Billy Napier or a Florida issue as much as it is a college football NCAA issue that you're just seeing happening at Florida right now.
Yeah, and I will also say to that point, like, I think if all 3 of those guys didn't get an opportunity in late February to go coach in the NFL, they'd still be at Florida right now, getting ready to start spring football next week. So this is an opportunity to make that jump, and especially if it's something that's been your goal, like Napier has said has been the case with Tony. You're going to take the opportunity. So we already know where things stand with the defensive coordinator spot. Has been reported first by Matt Zenich of On3 that Austin Armstrong is going to be the play caller for the Gators on defense, and will be the youngest defensive coordinator in the SEC. And a guy that really, when you look at his resume and the folks that he's worked for, and that includes Tony, there's a lot to like and a lot that makes sense about this hire for Billy. And I think that even though he was only in Tuscaloosa for 2 months, Nick,
just a cup of tea.
To me, if you can say I've been hired by Nick Saban gave me the green light to come work and coach football in his program, that says something about you. And so
Saban stamp.
The Saban stamp. And he's also got the smart stamp, and I think there's a lot to be said for that.
Well, the last rising star,
he didn't have those similar stamps.
No, he sure didn't. He had the Billy Napier stamp. He had that one. It will be interesting to see how Armstrong coming in also shakes up the coaching staff. So Armstrong hired as an inside linebackers coach, a linebacker guy. Jay Bateman is your inside linebackers coach. Bateman, in his last stop at UNC, coached safeties. You lost your safeties coach in Patrick Toney. If Bateman stays on staff, I think you probably ask him to move to safeties, or do you give Corey Raymond that whole room and say, hey, Corey, you get all the defensive backs. I don't think you need 2 linebackers coaches. or 3, I guess, because you got Mike P, who's coaching the outside linebackers, which are really, just a pass rusher edge position. But how does adding Austin Armstrong shuffle up the rest of the coaches that you still have in your deck?
Yeah, and to be clear, if you look into Bateman's past, he has actually coached safeties, and he's done it recently. The spot that he was at before Florida, when he was the co-DC in North Carolina, he was also the safeties coach. So, and he's also coached obviously linebackers in the past, and is coaching now at Florida. So that wouldn't be out of the question, without doubt. And I think if you're gonna, I don't think it would make sense, obviously, to move Armstrong there. You're going to have him be where he's been. And what's interesting, though, is the dynamic in the secondary, because Raymond clearly could handle, I think, that role of being just the sole DB coach. But I do remember the comment that Billy made in explaining his reasoning for hiring 2 offensive line coaches, which was, you hire 2 secondary coaches to coach the 5-6 guys in the secondary. Why would you not hire 2 guys to coach 5 offensive linemen? So with that theory in mind, it stands to reason he'll probably look for a safeties coach. Now, does he somehow get away with that and hire like an assistant secondary coach who's not one of the full-time guys, but is still an on-field coach, and is working with the players, and then you just make Corey Raymond the DB coach, and you now use that full-time staff spot somewhere else? Does Ryan O'Hara become now full-time as the quarterback coach? Do you get a full-time special teams coordinator, or do you bring in a special teams coordinator that also serves as the safeties coach? I mean, there's a lot that he can work with there, Nick.
A lot of moving pieces. If you got nothing nice to say, you shouldn't say it at all. So I'm not going to talk about the game changer coordinator right now. But I think if you want to get in on field, I don't think Ryan O'Hara gets moved to a permanent job. If you're looking at or a permanent on-field job. I mean, he has a permanent analyst job, but a permanent on-field job. You could have a tight ends coach and a special teams coordinator. I think that would make sense. In my opinion, your tight ends coach needs to be a great recruiter. You're not doing a ton of in-depth coaching. Like look back at Tim Brewster. Tim Brewster, as much as he likes to say Antonio Gates and who is the guy, Nick something from FSU, and claiming Kyle Pitts, like he's not making those guys great players. Tim Brewster was an assassin on the recruiting trail. And I think that's what you need at the tight end position. That was not William Peagler. William Peagler was not a great recruiter. I don't know if he was being handcuffed. I mean, you've got a bunch of guys in that room. No future Kyle Pitts in that room. So I think at the tight end spot, you need a great recruiter, and that can be somebody who, hey, the tight ends are also going to work with the offensive line a lot because as at least we saw in 2022, tight end was just the 6th offensive line position in Florida's offense. You can have that person split some duties with tight ends and get a special teams game-changing coordinator. To me, I think the move that makes most sense right now is you allow Armstrong to coach the inside linebacker, something he's familiar with. If he's going to be your play caller, because I don't think Sean Spencer has much or any experience calling plays, while Armstrong does, even at a lower level. I think you take less off of his plate. Hey, he understands linebackers. He's coached linebackers. You go and do that. That's something you can do in your sleep. And we're going to have some pieces around you. I think that makes sense to then move Bateman back to safeties and split those duties with Corey Raymond. The safeties last year also worked. The safeties coach, Tony, coached the nickels, the star position as well. So to me, that makes sense. I don't know that how much are you going to promote from within? Or do you promote from within? If you get some no's, and here, how calculated is Billy Napier, where we're not going to rush to make a hire? We will just have one of our analysts coach the tight ends. Or, hey, David Decker is already on campus. Young graduate assistant, quality control, worked with all these receivers already. Hey, we're not going to give you a title, but you're going to run that receiver room right now, and you'll be in contention for the job. But just because we have 9 days doesn't mean me as Billy Napier, I'm going to rush to make a hire because we have to have a coach there in place. When you rush to make a hire, then you get the coach in place and he doesn't fit with your team, and now you're firing a coach, or that coach is leaving and you're doing this all over again in a month from now just because you rushed to make a hire.
And it's going to be interesting because to me at tight end, there's not an obvious coaching candidate out there.
I got one. Ty Darlington, who was just on campus, left to be the University of Incarnate Word coach, former Oklahoma tight end. Might want to call Ty back. I'm like, hey, man, we didn't have an opening for you. Sure do now.
Well, I tell you who I don't think Billy's going to call was his tight end coach at Louisiana, because he's now the head coach at Louisiana. And I don't know if they're on speaking terms.
Don't think so.
But there's not as many names that jump out at you at that tight end spot like there is for the wide receiver candidates, which we'll get into. But yeah, Ty would certainly make a lot of sense. I wouldn't be against giving Cornelius Ingram a call, although I don't know if he's he wants to come to the college game. Right now working at his alma mater in Hawthorne, but
state champion Hawthorne.
Yeah, put some respect on that.
Put some respect on the Hawthorne. What are they? The Hornets?
Yeah, the Hornets. But definitely, I mean, hell, if he would be interested, that certainly would be qualified to teach that position. But we'll see. I think that's one, like you said, Nick, that he could potentially take his time with to get the right guy, especially if that guy is going to serve in some other roles or he wants him to bring some other things to the table, whether he's also going to help coach special teams. He's also going to be the recruiting coordinator, be very involved with that. And you want to make sure that you get the right guy. Now, receiver, I personally think that one could move a little bit quicker just because there's so many candidates out there. There's honestly 2 guys on staff that you could potentially promote from within. You mentioned David, but they also have the former Auburn OC who's on staff right now in an analyst role. He could easily be promoted to the wide receivers coach or even tight ends coach. And then you got candidates out there. The Dallas Bakers of the world, who I can report is among the list of candidates for sure. And then you also have obviously guys like Jeff Scott. Ike Hilliard is another former Gator that's recently coached in the SEC. And then you also have Billy's wide receiver coach at Louisiana, who is still there, although he's currently the offensive coordinator as well. So would he make a move from being an OC role to come be position coach at Florida? Well, we mentioned Brian Johnson earlier. He did the same thing. He was Houston's offensive coordinator and then came to UF to be a position coach. So Tim Legger is his name. So that's obviously another name to watch out for. But I just think because of those connections and so many options there that Billy should be able to make a hire at receiver pretty soon, I would think.
Yeah.
If he's looking to move fast.
If he's looking to move fast, and a bunch of options out there, and it'll be interesting, as you said, to see what direction they go in. I hadn't even really, until I just said it now on the podcast, even thought of like maybe they don't feel like they're up against the clock of spring camp, and that you can go through spring camp with an analyst running a position group and that you'll be fine, or that the alternative and getting it wrong is worse than not having somebody in place for camp.
Yeah. And, at this point in speaking with Billy, it seemed like he's got a plan in place, and he's ready to kind of deal with whatever the situation is going to be. And he feels like, to your point, Nick, about having the Army and so many coaches that work with the team in various roles. They've basically set it up to where, as he said, it's been built so that they can manage attrition. And the quote that he gave me was that they've lost 4 to 8 people every year that he's been a head coach. So this is something that he's had to go through before. He's had to hire a new defensive coordinator before. He's had to make other staff changes. So it's the name of the game. The timing obviously is not good, but at least you have a chance to maybe make all those hires before or close to around spring ball. But like you've had, and we've seen coaches leave teams right before a football season starts. So Gators could be in a worse spot. But again, if you're losing a coach or coaches because the NFL came calling and that's why you're having to make a change, again, that's something that you can have as a feather in your cap if you're Billy and attract the next names.
Hopefully, hopefully we're not sitting here, in September with still 7 coaches. Really, really thorough through this vetting process.
Come on now, Nicholas. He won't take that long. But we're going to definitely follow along and kind of see how it all plays out. The Gators get ready to start spring practice on May 4th. That is,
4th.
Yeah, May 4th. And they'll be out there second year for Billy Napier and this staff. And obviously a lot of roster turnover. Now you're dealing with some coaching changes as well. So having an opportunity to sit down with him this week, certainly had some questions about kind of what they went through this offseason, obviously in the first year as well. But more importantly, what are you guys doing to get better? I mean, what steps are being taken to kind of improve the product in year 2? What gives him signs of encouragement that things are going to improve? And, one thing that I thought that was interesting that he talked about was where he feels the team is kind of farther along this year than they were last year, and it admitted that this was basically an area that they lacked, and that was the player ownership and the accountability. And it was a theme that we kind of heard him talk about throughout his first offseason, and mentioning how the guys were still kind of learning how to gel, learning how to take ownership, all the things that you naturally go through in a first year, that now in year 2, with these guys having already been through it, a lot of returners, and then a lot of guys that committed to the staff that now make up the roster, the ownership level is at a different pace. And there's not as much, things that need to be told to them. They know what the expectations are. When he watches his team go through workouts, he sees that there's a lot of players that are leading things and not so many coaches that are having to tell these guys what to do. You're seeing new leadership emerge as well, because as we've talked about on this show, the amount of starters and veterans and seniors that have moved on has created somewhat of a void of veterans. And in having a chance to just talk with him directly and not program sources and kind of boots on the ground, it was good to just hear from him. He echoed a lot of the things that I've heard, Nick. And, again, they have not hit the practice field yet. But as a head coach, you should be able to notice things like that. You will observe this team for a whole year. You saw where these players were and where this staff was and where your operation was in February 2022. And a year removed from that, I think part of the reason why he has some of the quiet confidence that we've talked about is because of how he's seeing this operation run right now.
Yeah, and who am I to say that he's wrong? I don't think he and I view his team the same way. And when I look at what Florida brings back and I look at what they have on their schedule, I certainly hope he's right and I'm wrong. I just think there's so many question marks. Obviously, wink, wink, the coaches can't be out there. They can't be around the team right now. So he's just, observing from afar. He does have a nice view from his office, as you got to see. Nice little glass window that kind of looks out and everything. Maybe he's standing there window shopping. He's certainly getting reports back from Mark Hockey and the strength staff. I'm really, really intrigued to get out there, Zach. And I know that we all complain about the access that we get. I want to see Graham Mertz throw a football. I want to see Jack Miller throwing a football. I want to see Micah Mazuka. I want to see Spurlock and Trajada, and I want to see these new guys. I want to see what Andy Jean looks like at 200 pounds, running 22 miles an hour. I just have so many question marks. I don't have a great feeling about this team in 2023, but that can be changed from spring practice, and it will likely be changed one way or the other. I could leave spring practice going, whoo, buddy, let's just get through these next 6 months and on to year 3 when Billy will be on the hottest of hot seats. Or maybe they surprise us, and maybe Billy and going through 24 quarterbacks in the transfer portal before landing on Graham Mertz, maybe he's right, and he's certainly forgotten more football than I know. But me sitting here right now, I don't have a great feeling about the 2023 Gators, and I'm looking forward to seeing that first version of them this spring camp.
Yeah, and obviously a lot to look forward to because there are so many new pieces. There's a lot of newness within this program, and there's also some changes too that I think have led to Billy feeling the way that he does, and he kind of explained some of the root of that, when we had a chance to sit down. And he does this, and I think all coaches do this at the end of every season, which is sit down and have exit interviews with their players. Now, what do those exit interviews entail, and how are they different from coach to coach, and what actually comes out of them, and what maybe changes or things are enacted because of what a coach might uncover from those? I think that certainly varies. But if you take Billy at his word, it seems like he puts a lot of stock into what his players have to say. And after he got hired at Florida last year, first thing that he did was sought out the opinions of the current players. And after this first season, he did the same thing once again. In the offseason, brought each guy that returned into his office, basically gave them the floor, not just to talk about, hey, how the year went for you, what do you see your role being, but also wanted to get from them, hey, how can we improve our product? What do you feel like we didn't do well? How can this thing be better in 2023? And after speaking with all those players, he basically put together some player-led initiatives that have changed the way that they do some of the things in off-season workouts and just some of the ways that they run the program. And as Billy said, these are things that they requested, and he has basically empowered them this offseason to enact those things. And so when you talk about player ownership and accountability and wanting that from your team as a coach, well, that's one great way to get it is kind of by giving them that power. And I think it also, there's something to be said about, for a player to go and sit down with your coach and kind of spill the beans, so to speak, and then actually see some changes made and be like, man, my coach is actually hearing me out. So those were some of the things that he shared as to what he feels like is maybe the root of some of the changes that he's seen.
We will see for ourselves.
Nick is not trying to but take any stock into the off-season workouts, it sounds like.
Yeah, hey, everyone's good. Everyone's great in the spring. Everyone's off-season workouts went great. Every team in the country had an awesome off-season, and they're great. And then a bunch of teams don't make a bowl game.
Yeah,
but they had a great off-season. So I can call me the doubting Thomas. I need to see it with my own eyes, Zach.
You got to see it, but we still got to go in there and ask the questions, and we still got to write stories, and we still got to get his perspective on where his program is at. And if this is how he feels, and this is his truth, whether we buy into it or not,
speak your truth, Bill.
Hey, we're gonna write it. So, but again, this does come back to obviously what happens on the football field, and another part of that I kind of took away and have been interesting to hear from him was just his recruiting calendar and what their process is like for identifying talent, how they kind of map it out and what their process is like. And it's obviously changed a lot. He said that it used to be like a 6-stage calendar that they had, and now that's 8 stages because of the transfer portal. But you look at the results, obviously, from this past offseason, you get in 10 transfers. You bring in the amount of early enrollees that they did. Not only did they sign a solid class and a lot of blue chips, but they got these guys here for January, which is when they needed them. And, he said he's never been a part of a team that added 27 players in January. That's the most that he's been a part of. And in speaking with him, it feels like he's confident that's going to make a difference. And I think he knows that they had to make a difference because of all the veterans that they lost. You needed some of these transfers to come and step into those roles. The Mertzes and the Millers and Mitchells and guys like that.
It's going to be critical for those guys. Mazuka, Spurlock, the transfer guys to come in and provide leadership. And it sounds weird because they haven't been here. They haven't gone through this yet. This is all brand new to them. But of those 27 guys, only 10 of them, so like just under a third, have got guys that have any experience. So you need those 10 to be, even though they are new, to be a group that the other early enrollees, the other mid-year guys, the freshmen, the true freshmen, can lean on. Hey, we're still going through this for the first time, but I'm still going through with washing my clothes on my own. Mom's not washing my clothes anymore. How do I manage all of this? And you hear it from guys all the time, I just learned how to take care of myself, and handle school, handle practice, handle coaches yelling at me, film, and all this other stuff. Just learned how to do that. So I think it is huge, and you can't discount the number of guys that they have in mid-year. That will help. That will help you when you get ready for Utah on whatever day the Pac-12 decides to announce that game will be played. That is a big thing for Florida, and I think it's something that does that slow down the process. As much as we've talked about, Zach, about you're in year 2 and that helps things. Well, almost a third of your roster is new and hasn't gone through it, and it's some amazing turnover. But a credit to Billy and the coaching staff for getting this many guys on campus mid-year.
Yeah, because if they didn't, spring practice would be hard.
It would have been a sketchy spring game. It would have been like one of those Muschamp years where it's like, hey, we have 7 offensive linemen, so we're going to do a 7-on-7 for the spring game. I don't miss those Muschamp spring games, man.
Oh, man. Good old Coach Boom.
Boom.
Your boy.
No, certainly not.
Well, we're going to switch.
Haven't gotten a Christmas card from the Muschamps yet.
No, don't think it's coming.
I don't think so.
But you know what? He's a national champion. He doesn't need any Christmas cards. Not from the media, at least, the UF media. No. Well, we switch gears now. Obviously, the Gators are in full swing with basketball. Baseball season open. Softball is absolutely killing it. And do also want to mention and give a shout out to the swimming and diving teams sweeping the SEC titles for the first time since 1993. The men's and women's teams. So you got some teams on campus still winning championships next. Remember, we said this on the pod. I was like, look, I need to go and write a story, do some coverage on one of these other championship teams at UF, and I got my wish.
Yeah. 1993, I would go ahead and say, not even venture to guess, nobody on that roster that just won SEC titles was alive the last time Florida swept it. Not even close. So credit to them. Listen, Florida's coming off of a loss on the baseball diamond, but they can win the SEC this year. Mouse has run out of fingers and toes to put rings on. We're covering a big Olympic non-revenue sports school, Zach. We just haven't fully embraced it yet.
What's up, Florida fans? Wanted to encourage all of you to go check out rogueshop.com if you have issues sleeping, chronic pain, and or anxiety and stress. Rogue Shop sells CBD, THC, edibles, smokables, and vapes, as well as handcrafted bath salts, soaps, candles, massage oils, pain creams, and topicals. Rogue Shop is a true small business, disabled, veteran-owned, Black-owned, woman-owned company. They have 5 employees and make all of their products with their own cannabis grown in their manufacturing facility. Visit rogueshop.com. That's ROGUESHOP.com. Tell you what, it looks like the NFL is starting to fully embrace Anthony Richardson, because we've seen him now get about the highest draft projection that you can get, Nicholas. Number 1 overall. Nope. He is now projected to go first in the draft. That was the latest projection from CBS, and I don't think it's going to be the last, because he's getting ready to head to the combine next week.
We haven't even got the Anthony Richardson hype missile hasn't even been launched yet. He hasn't even shown up to Indianapolis at 250 running a 4.4 yet. He hasn't even
jumped. He hasn't even had the 45 vert yet.
The Anthony Richardson hype is slowly building, and it's almost annoying, Zach. Like, you and I have been championing Anthony Richardson for years now, and it's almost like Gator fans are like, "Hey, look at this," and you're like, "Yeah, where have you been? We've been saying this for more than a year now," and now you're like, "Oh yeah, but so and so said it." You're like, "Well, you called me an idiot when I said he should leave," and he's going to be a very rich man in a couple months.
Yeah, it's obviously, like you said, he hasn't even started going through the full process yet, and just already the buzz that's out there. You know, the NFL official Twitter account tweeted out his highlights from last season, and man, it is hard to watch those and not look at him, as they said, as the best quarterback in the draft, or certainly, as they labeled it, the most athletic quarterback in the draft. Now, we've seen the inconsistencies, we've seen the up and down performances, and some of the growing pains that he went through in his first year as a starter, which I think for maybe some Florida fans, it's why it's taken them some time to fully see and realize his potential. But now it's there. And I think now he's going to get to this combine. He's going to go through this draft process. Teams are going to see the highlights. They're going to acknowledge the lowlights, but they're going to see his skill set. They're going to see his numbers. They're going to see his measurables and say, this guy is a physical specimen and freak, and he's got all the tools that we need at the quarterback position. And yes, we know he needs some work. Yes, we know he's not fully developed. Yes, we know he could have maybe used another season as a starter in college. But we have this QB that we're going to be able to mold, and we're going to coach him up. He's going to be the perfect fit for our offense, and we're using our first pick on him. And looks obviously like where things are trending. I don't think he's going to make it out of the top 5, and at this point would be shocked if he's even close to the top 10, Nick. I mean, it's just he's only going to improve his stock as we get closer to April.
The late, great Al Davis would have traded shares in the Oakland Raiders to move up to draft Anthony Richardson after his combine he's going to have. And listen, I totally understand Florida's fans' frustrations, but I think the frustrations around Anthony Richardson are because deep down you realize that he is that dude. He can be that guy, and he just wasn't consistent enough for your team last season. He's not everyone. Like, the defense was terrible, atrocious in 2022. He can't play defense. He turned the ball over too much. He thought too much. Yes, he probably could be a better quarterback if he came back another year. If you're going to be 1-1, 1-5, why would you ever come back? And to the people who thought this is a second round, third round guy, he's making a mistake. Okay.
Yeah. Well, and The way this thing is trending, Nick, you could have 2 former Florida quarterbacks starting in the NFL next year as our boy,
Killer Kyle.
Kyle Trask. It is Trask time in Tampa. The latest reports coming out is that the Bucs are fully in on Trask taking over as the quarterback, and doesn't look like they're going to be out there in the market for anybody to come in as a trade. They've developed him behind Tom Brady. He's put in his time, and now it's time to see him take the big stage, Nick. I, for one, am pumped. I'm not a Bucs fan, but, man, I can't wait to see that guy play.
And that's Zach. Put Zach on the Bart Scott GIF, Bart Scott clip. Can't wait. If there was another quarterback that I could probably say, I don't think there is another quarterback that I could say, he's probably okay. Like, he understands it. He's fine being a backup. He'll get it. He'll keep working as he's a starter. Poor Kyle Trask has been stuck in this backup role, senior of high school, 4 years at Florida, almost graduated with a degree from the University of Florida before he earned his first start. And then you get drafted by a team who has Tom Brady. You're like, well, guess we're back to the bench. For me, it was frustrating watching the Bucs. So the Bucs were just so intense. And listen, Tom Brady got his job by an injury. If Drew Bledsoe doesn't get hurt, Tom Brady never gets an opportunity. So Tom Brady played his whole career with that in his mind. No. This 22-year-old's not getting a snap in practice. I don't care when you drafted him. I'll take all of the snaps in practice. And then it seemed like the Bucs were just so invested or so fine with Blaine Gabbert that you didn't see Kyle Trask, in my opinion, get enough snaps in the preseason.
Yeah.
Or even be active enough on Sundays to get, garbage time play. And Blaine Gabbert would get that. But as not a first-round pick, he doesn't have that fifth-year option. So the Bucs only have 2 more years of Kyle Trask guaranteed. He can leave. He can go somewhere else. So I think they're in a position where we have to play Kyle Trask because we have to know this year if he's going to be that guy or not. And if he isn't, then we probably have a really high pick and we can take somebody else in the draft. But
he's that guy. He's that guy. He's him. Trust.
Yes. Big. Boop, boop. We're all aboard the trash train here, Zach.
I don't care if this gets pulled up in a couple years on freezing cold takes. I'll own it.
Yeah.
You put Trask with that first team, forget about it.
If you want to win, let Trask spin.
I love it. Let's go. Let's go. Well, look, we got to see the Gator baseball team spin it out there at Conjuring Ballpark, Nick. We're getting ready to be joined by Jacob Young. But before we start that interview, just want to get your take on opening weekend and what you saw from the Gators.
You got to beat the teams you're supposed to beat the way you're supposed to beat them. That's what they did against Charleston Southern. That was one of the worst fielding baseball teams I've ever seen in my life. They were pretty bad. You look at those scores, 13-3, 16-2, 8-0. The one game that doesn't go mercy rule is a shutout. And then you follow that up. Florida goes to South Florida, wins 6-1. Meltdown on Wednesday night. I was there for it. I had the tweet ready to be fired up, the winning tweet. And then just an atrocious and inexcusable error in right field on a ball that has to be caught leads to a complete bullpen meltdown. Florida ends up losing 10-9 at Conjuring Ballpark. These things are going to happen. I know that the season has now been canceled. Kevin O'Sullivan has been fired. His house is for sale. Not even for sale. We're just giving it away. But midweek losses are going to happen. Florida did not go to its closer in Brandon Neely because they threw him the night before down in Tampa, and Kevin O'Sullivan protects arms. So I think if it's later in the year, you probably have Brandon Neely throw and probably get out of that game with a win. But at this point in the season, doesn't really matter much. It's a non-conference game. You have to win your SEC games, and you have to get your guys ready. You'd rather have those guys like Blake Purnell and Jamison Fisher fail in February than fail, in June, during a regional or during the SEC tournament. So that stuff's going to happen. You get Cincinnati, similar to Charleston Southern, picked at the bottom of their conference. This should be a sweep weekend for Florida at home. And when you got those three guys, Brandon Sproat, Hurston Waldrop, and Jack Caglione, who is quickly becoming America's college baseball, America's sweetheart. Jack Caglione hit a ball 115 miles an hour off the bat. He's got 2 home runs this year, and then was throwing the ball 99 last Sunday. So there's no rest on Sunday for the Cincinnati Bearcats, and I will be interested to see this. So does Jack hit for himself on Sunday? They didn't have him hit for himself last Sunday as his first start. It's something that, especially if he keeps tearing the cover off the ball the way that he is, you don't take his bat out of the lineup when he hits. I think we'll see Jack hit for himself on Sunday, which means we might get a pitch thrown 100 and a ball hit 100 by the same guy in the same game. And I will not be able to contain my excitement if we do see that, Zach.
Yeah, it's just nice to see baseball back, man. My son was out there for 2 of the games. He wanted to go to the South Florida game on Wednesday and then was glad that he did not go. It was not a good Wednesday for Florida athletics. Although the women's tennis team won. Shout out.
Hey, shout out to
Florida
tennis.
Gulf Coast.
Shout out to tennis. Big non-revenue sports school.
Well, we'll see what the Gators have in store next weekend against Cincy. And we're going to jump to this break. When we come back on the other side, we'll be joined by former Gator Jacob Young to talk about his time with the Gators and also his path to the pros. We'll be right back after this break. Welcome back into the Gators Online Show. We're now joined by our guest of the week, former Gator Jacob Young. This interview is brought to you by Vitamin Energy. Jacob, thanks for joining us this week, man.
No, thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to see you guys again.
We were just
Absolutely.
talking.
It's baseball season.
Yeah,
It is. Finally
Jake,
baseball season.
Jacob, tell us where you are right now, because that certainly doesn't look like home. That looks like a hotel somewhere in spring training.
Yeah, so I'm at the Marriott in West Palm Beach. I've been here since the 1st of February, and we end about the beginning of April. So we're about halfway. We start playing games pretty soon. So, just living the life down here in West Palm.
Listen, you played with Pete Alonso, and I remember we always used to ask Pete, like, "Hey, you seem to really kickstart it towards the end of the year." And he goes, "Yeah, well, we don't have school anymore because baseball season runs after finals." So I think all college baseball players dream of what you're doing right now, which is just waking up, hitting BP, playing some ball, taking some grounders out, taking some pop flies, not having to worry about school or class or anything like that.
Yeah, and sadly I didn't get to play with Pete. He was right after me, but playing baseball with no school is very nice. Luckily I was able to finish my degree, so I don't have to worry about anything in that regard. But just waking up and that your day is going to consist of going to the field, hitting, maybe running some bases, catching some fly balls, and then you're going back home, and that's your job now. It's kind of unreal to think about at first because that's what you dream of as a kid. And then when you're actually living it, it's a really cool feeling.
And obviously, Jacob, you've been working on this dream ever since you were young, and then got to go through it obviously during your path at Florida. We are in baseball season now, and I'm sure around this time you get to thinking about your days at UF. What's it like, man, when you reflect back on your college career and the time that you got to spend here, and obviously experiences that you got to have?
Yeah, it's crazy how fast it went. A lot of the good memories are just the guys on the team, a lot of who I still talk to, people who are going to be at my wedding, people whose weddings I've gone to. That's a really cool part, really meeting those guys and living with them and getting to know them. And they're like your family for that time because you're away from your own family, and getting to play with all of them all the time is a great feeling. And then kind of just thinking about all the places you played and talking to all these other college baseball players and comparing, your experiences at Arkansas, that sold out crowd. And when some of these guys go to like the Texas ballparks and kind of just listening to what everyone has to say and realizing like how cool it was and how much it means to still be a Gator and kind of checking back on them and stuff is really fun.
Now, what is that experience like? There's Florida loses so many recruits to the MLB draft that never even get to campus. Having been traveling at a D1 program like Florida with the kind of facilities and budget that they have, and then traveling, with a single A, double A team, how do you compare and contrast just the experience of playing baseball at a school like Florida, and then you're in the minors, and it might not be as pretty as some of the hotels and means of transportation?
Yeah, you don't realize how nice the stuff is at Florida. Getting onto a little charter plane and rolling into your nice Marriott or your whatever we are. It was fun though. You getting to experience that, kind of being that like at that high level, and now you're dropped back down. It just makes you kind of want to get back to that level in the major leagues and get up there and kind of it's kind of like what you're dreaming of again. Kind of, it's a gut check, but it's nice, it's something to look forward to and work towards. But I'm definitely missing some of those plane rides and those hotels that we get at Florida.
Let me take you back real quick to Florida. The 2020 season is weird, but you ended with an 18 game. Well, I guess the hitting streak started in 19. Out there in Lubbock, which that was an experience for me to drive there. Speaking of travel, I didn't get to fly to Lubbock like you guys did. I had a very sketchy drive, 4.5 hours from Dallas to Lubbock to go see that regional.
It's a fun place.
Yeah, sure. That's a way to put it. You have 2 hits there in the Lubbock regional, and then you hit in every game safely during that weird 2020 year. And I remember going into 2021, you keep getting hits, and you're getting closer and closer to this streak. And I kept refusing. They were like, "Hey, you want to bring Jacob to the post-game media?" And I'm like, "No, keep him away from us. We are baseball fans here. We are superstitious." Just what was going through your mind during your hit streak?
Yeah, so that 2020 year, the COVID year, I mean, I kind of knew about it, just like it's just at the end because it got to like 12 or 13. But at that point we were undefeated, so I think that actually helped us more that like we hadn't lost. Like that was the biggest focus, just trying to win games, and of course not knowing how that was going to end. But going to that FSU game, we wanted to somehow figure out a way to get undefeated until SEC play starts, at least to that point. And I remember that game, I think it was 0 for 2 or 0 for 1 of the walk. Late in the game, I jam shotted one to short and beat it out. And Kirby hit a ball to right field the next at bat, and the kid robbed it for a home run. We ended up losing that game. But then the next day, everything shuts down. And so the last thing on my mind was that hit streak. I was like, okay, we'll see what happens. And then the next season came along. No one really talked about in the fall too much. And then we got to the next season when we started off with Miami that year. And then there was some chatter, like as I was getting closer to guys like Jonathan India and names like that you kind of watch play as a kid. And that was really cool to see. And then as we got closer and closer, I was really hoping to get a hit on my first at-bat because every at-bat that I got through, when I got in the dugout, people were trying to talk to me like, hey, man, like, you okay? And then I'm like, yeah, I'm good. But that last game, I remember after I went 0 for 1, I was 0 for 2, and no one would talk to me in the dugout. They didn't want to say anything to me. The day I tied, I was like, oh my! No one would talk to me. No one, like I didn't want to talk to anyone. And I just remember when I finally hit that ground ball, I just told myself, hit a ground ball and hope you beat it out because I wanted to give myself a chance on it.
Hit and run.
But yeah, hit and run. And so, but just seeing all the excitement, having all the guys come out there, congratulating me and kind of realizing how long Gator baseball has been something, and now your name's in that record book, and you've been a fan your whole life. So knowing that is a really cool experience, and it's something I watch out for to see if anyone gets close, so I can kind of root them on like he did for me.
Are you
And
rooting them
obviously we
on?
just saw
Really?
LeBron-
Like, are you really rooting them on?
That was my question. We just saw LeBron, beat Kareem's record, and everybody was wondering how Kareem felt about that. How did Tim Olsen take you breaking his 21-year-old record?
Yeah, he texted me on Twitter. He DM'd me either the night I tied it or the night before, and he was just, "Hey man, like congratulations!" I think it was the night I tied it. Congratulations, like this is really cool. Like I never knew him or anything. He just kind of reached out to me, so that was a really cool experience getting to talk to him. And he was just told me, break in, don't stop type of thing. And I know Colby got kind of close to it last year, or he was in the teens or something. I don't know who it was at. I texted him, man. I texted him once it ended, and I was like, you're so close, like halfway or something, just like messing with him, knowing Colby for a while. But no, I think it's cool whenever it happens because it kind of gets brought back up and you get to think about it again. So it's kind of cool when guys get close.
So you purposely jinxed Colby. You probably
I
you saw him at like 13. You were like, "Hey man, you're doing great. This is watch out. They're gonna start pitching you this way."
No, after for sure.
JY, I've always found it interesting. I go back to a super regional, and Alex Faedo's on the mound, and I'm in the old McKeithen Park, and I'm watching the draft. He's out there pitching, and his mom and his girlfriend at the time are watching him get drafted. There was another game where somebody in the stands yelled at Jonathan India on deck, "Hey, you were just picked 6th overall." How do you handle as a baseball player, especially your draft year, you're getting down to that point where you're playing for either the right to get host a super regional, right to host a regional, or playing in those regionals, trying to get to Omaha? How do you compartmentalize that, which is a dream you've had since you were playing T-ball, with my team goals and what we're trying to accomplish here as a team?
Yeah, it's something of, especially with how big Twitter is now. I mean, you can't go on Twitter without seeing some ranking or someone talking about something about draft. And I think the biggest thing, well, it's nice they moved it back so that now you don't do it in the middle of regionals to begin with. Right. That was a smart thing. But it's something that usually when it starts ramping up a lot, it's when the games matter more. So like end of SEC play, SEC tournament, regionals. So you're kind of so focused on trying to move on and just advance that, at least for myself, that's what I kind of put my head to, is trying to find a way for us to win, because the more we won, the better I was going to look anyways with the type of player I am. And after that, you just got to kind of trust all. I mean, you've been playing there for 3 years or 2 years, however long it is. So you got to kind of just trust that and just put your head down and keep on doing it, because those last 5 games or last 3 weeks, it's not going to change really how you get drafted. They're going to look at the whole body of work and kind of go from there. So you try to zone it out with Twitter and stuff. Like I said, it's really hard a lot of times. It's even hard now. You see yourself in a ranking with this or that. And it's the new age of social media, but trying to just kind of focus on yourself and the team in those kind of aspects, really kind of drown it out and make it go a little faster.
Jacob, obviously getting a chance to go through the draft process and actually hear your name called and know that you'd become a pro. What was that day, moment, and experience like for you?
Yeah, we kind of knew what day it was going to be. So we had plans to invite some of my close friends over, and it was just something I wanted to do with my family and my fiance, and I didn't want other people there. It wasn't really the stress of it, but just as you're waiting and seeing all these names called, you're waiting for that to happen. So I wanted just to kind of relax on my couch and kind of see everyone that I knew getting drafted, congratulate them, and then kind of wait for my time. But when it did happen, it was a cool feeling. It's a lot of work, a lot of years, a lot of missed things, events. So just hearing your name called and realizing you get to start a new journey, and you kind of get to start living the dream of professional baseball was a really amazing feeling.
You get drafted by the Nats, and obviously, if I had asked you this pre-draft, no one wants to pick a team. But did you grow up rooting for a team, and what has it been like being a part of the Nationals organization?
Yeah, so my whole family's from California. I was the only one born in Florida, so we're big Angel fans. So I grew up loving the Angels. Probably anytime before I got drafted, that's who I rooted for. I was a big Trout guy. So my dad still watches them a lot, so I get all their information. So I'm still a big Angel. Love listening to them and kind of seeing what they're doing. But the Nats have been great. They really they're kind of been on the front edge of all this a lot of the new changes they're making with trying to make our lives easier. It's hard to do. There's a lot of people in professional baseball, so it's hard to kind of make it easier, and they've kind of done that. So just by helping us with living and stuff like that, food. So it's been a good time meeting all the new guys, seeing all these great players from around the country, and even a lot of the guys from like the Dominican Republic. Getting to meet with all them, hearing a lot of Spanish.
How's your Spanish?
I can hear it. I can't really talk it. I can listen though and understand. As long as they're not talking about me, I'm kind of good, and then I kind of move on. But a lot of them are really good at English, so you can have full conversations with them. But no, with the Nats, it's been a pleasure working with all their guys. All the coordinators, we have guys like Coco Crisp, Billy Mueller. So guys you kind of grew up watching as a kid, now you're getting coached by them. So that's a really, really cool feeling.
And then obviously, go ahead. No, you're good.
What's that like to kind of, especially in spring training, just seeing guys who have, 10, 12 years, guys you've watched on TV. And then all of a sudden, you're sharing a clubhouse or you're sharing, a backfield with a guy. What has that been like? Is there like a pinch me moment or like a holy crap, like I'm on the same field as so-and-so?
Yeah, so I would say last year, spring training, I got to play in one of the big league games. And I got to sit in the dugout with Soto and Nelson Cruz, and we played the Cardinals. So guys like Albert Pujols came in the dugout, Paul Goldschmidt. So stuff like that, that was surreal for that time, kind of the first time being in that environment with guys that, Albert Pujols, I've been playing baseball since I was little. So seeing him kind of come up to you and just talk to Soto and all those guys was really cool. And then like this year now, a lot of the guys in Major League camp I know I've played with or stuff like that. So it doesn't have that feeling as much. You're kind of teammates with them. You guys have been through the same thing or going through the same thing. So it becomes more kind of used to it. But definitely the last year, that first time, I was like, yeah, this is pretty cool.
Yeah.
Obviously, Jacob, pretty cool too to get that call up that you had last season, man. What was the build up like for that? Were you anticipating it and just knowing when you did get the call that you're headed to the World Series, man? What was that? Had to be surreal.
You mean like the playoffs for the low A?
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool. Like we just we knew we were close the whole year, kind of with how their playoffs work. So as we got kind of closer and closer to the end, we had a magic number, and anytime you get a magic number in anything, it gets a lot more fun. Kind of you're working towards something for 100-something games, and now you're 5 games away or 6 games away. So just trying to win that game and then running into the locker room to see if the team that you're going against lost was a cool experience, and then finally getting to celebrate when we did clinch the playoffs was a fun thing. Never got to experience anything like that, and hopefully there's a lot more to come.
And then before we get you out of here, wanted to just bring you back a little bit to kind of I guess the brotherhood that you have with former teammates at Florida. How much, as much as your schedule permits, are you checking in on other guys, whether they're in the same same classification as you, or they're pro guys, or even old teammates that are still in college? How much are you checking in on the Gators, which I think I know a little bit just based on talking to you, and then how much are you checking in on your teammates as they're chasing the same dream as you?
Yeah, so in terms of the Gators, I watch a lot of the times when I can, especially on days like spring training. We're usually done kind of early, so I can catch the night games on Friday and Saturday. So I try to watch whenever I can. A lot of the guys are still there. Not a lot, but a few. But like Colby, Rivera, Wyatt, of course. Some of the pitchers are still there. So seeing those guys, and I work out with Colby in the offseason sometimes. So getting to talk to him and just seeing what he's doing is a lot of fun. And then I love talking some smack to all the other colleges around here. So whenever they win, it makes me – I have a lot of Tennessee guys and a lot of SEC guys around here. So it's fun to mess with them whenever we win and they lose. But
wasn't fun last year.
No. But this year we're hoping it's going to be a little more fun. And then with teammates, so like my roommates, Judd Fabian, Ben Speck, David Lucci, we have a group chat. We talk every day, I would say. I think we've talked every day since we left. So we all were at Judd's wedding. We were in his party. So like those are guys, like I said, they're family at this point. You get to experience so much with them, and it's who you're seeing every day for 3 years. So kind of getting that close with those type of guys. I check in on Judd a lot. And then a lot of other guys kind of will see through social media what they're doing. Like I know Chris Armstrong's at JU now playing, so I check in on him a lot because they'll play a lot of teams around that I'm used to. So I'll watch him and kind of check in on him. So just a lot of kids like that, just checking in to make sure to see how everyone's doing and kind of congratulate them when something great happens. Now,
Judd, Eric, and Derek have all given me the same story. I offered ghostwriting a ghostwriting opportunity to Derek for his best man speech. They all said it went well. Derek obviously was coming back from being hit in the face a couple months before. How was Derek's best man speech at the wedding?
Derek's best man speech was very good.
Okay.
He had a tough follow. He had the groom's or the bride's dad. He had to go after the bride's dad, so he had a tough follow. But he did very well. But I would say the highlight of the night, I would say Eric Fabian's dancing is probably the best thing I've seen so far. So I would say Derek did great, but I would say Eric on the dance floor took the night.
Oh, it's fantastic! I'm gonna need footage of that. Gonna have to. I think Mary will be the one that would end up giving me that leaking that footage to me. Mary's the one. And then I was joking with Judd. I was like, with the weird dimensions in Baltimore, they might be looking for 2 center fielders. You might need you might be looking at a quick call up with that weird janky left field they have there in Baltimore. Yeah, no,
that's a great spot for him. The way they kind of handle baseball and the way they kind of look at their players, that's a great spot for Judd to kind of fly up the rankings and hopefully make his debut quicker than we think.
And with the late trade last year, Juan Soto leaving with Washington certainly doesn't hurt Jacob Young's standing in the Nationals organization, and we're certainly hoping to get ready to see you make that MLB debut.
Thank you, guys.
Yeah, absolutely, man. We're definitely fun to catch up with you again, man. Definitely wish you the best of luck in spring training this year, and hopefully we'll see you around Condren Family Ballpark at some point for a game as well, man.
Yeah, I'm hoping to find a way to get down there for at least one game. If not, I'm gonna have to keep on DMing Nick for the inside information.
You always got it.
Well, that is former Gator Jacob Young. Really appreciate his time and appreciate all you guys for tuning in this week. That'll do it for this Gators Online show. We'll be back next week. For Nick Del Torre, I'm Zach Albuquerque.